What's up, guys? Today's the day. Archer Rework and Sork are finally here, and I know Archer doesn't exactly have the largest player base in the live servers, so I wanted to give a little coverage to show like the TLDR of what changed and kind of put some things into perspective if you're curious and don't have access to global apps. So right out the gates, the first thing that I noticed is that Full Bloom now has these two branches that branch out from it. So this first one is more like a passive in a sense, and it turns Full Bloom into like a long range damage dealing ability instead of a close range projectile. So instead, like on live servers, you typically want to be like hugging a person before you do it and hit them with all the projectiles. Well, with the current one, all the projectiles do the same damage, so it's designed so that you can get out some damage from range and give you more options. And as you can see, it has a really far hitbox. And the way I understand it, you can hit 2 people per arrow, as I understand it. And obviously, it's hard to test the damage on global labs because they don't always translate well into the actual game. But as of right now, it seems to be hitting decently hard. It does have split damage, so kind of keep that in mind. The second part, which is probably my favorite part of the change, is it added a new skill that's activated by S plus Q. It's spammable, it gives a movement speed debuff, and it has pretty good range. So it's like this. So as you can see, you kind of send this concentrated nuke out in an area. The recoil is kind of annoying, but I like this ability because it gives you a lot of reach. And one thing that I noticed, it actually works from higher elevation, which is something that Archer kind of struggles with in the current game. You can actually launch these missiles out from a higher elevation and hit pretty consistently on low animations. Because I know a lot of times, you have issues with Archer with your terrain just eating up your abilities and not really being able to stand up on like walls and things and get your damage out. That's pretty nice. It does, of course, have split damage, so we'll have to see how that works out. But so far the damage seems to be pretty nice on it. Seems to be pretty nice. With the core, the frontal guard core for Full Bloom, you actually don't get it on this ability because this is ability like kind of unique and on its own and separate from Full Bloom. But you will still get the Full Bloom frontal guard if you're using the passive that turns it into a long range nuke. And by not taking this passive, Full Bloom, as far as I've been able to test, still works basically the same that it does if you for some reason don't want that long range capability, but I imagine most people would. Past that, they made it so that Light Trail actually has a 10% attack speed self buff, which is pretty nice. It has an 8-second uptime, and the cooldown for reapplying it is 10 seconds. So it's up for 10 seconds, and it has a 8-second duration. So that's pretty nice. So you basically can have this up at all times. It's pretty nice. Past that, Piercing Light. So the Piercing Light change is pretty nice. Currently on live server, whenever you do Piercing Light, when you shoot it early, it will do a stiffen. And when you charge it all the way, it'll do a knockdown. Well, they changed it and made it so that you will always get that knockdown effect, which is really, really nice for like extending combos from range where, you didn't exactly have the time to charge up the full max charge to get that extra knockdown. And they also lowered the cooldown to 15 seconds. So overall, that is nice. Really, really nice. So as you can saw, it was just one singular charge instead of having to charge twice. And if you insta-shoot it, you get the knockdown. If you charge it up all the way, you also get the knockdown. So overall, pretty nice increase for Piercing Light. The next thing, just overall damage increases. So Righteous Might, as you can see, it was raised to 10 hits. So it's 1.7k times 10, which is just a massive damage increase. It's like what, an additional 3 hits. The only thing that I notice here is that the BSR Righteous Might only adds 1 hit now because it didn't also receive the extra 3 hits. So that's a little weird that they also didn't kind of translate some of those changes over to the BSR version, but maybe that's something that they're going to do with time. Past that, Pretty big damage increase on Radiant Explosion, 1.2k times 8. That's overall another really nice change that they did. So my second favorite thing that I would say is that the tactical strike, which is your side roll iframe, it had the iframe duration buffed. So on current servers, it's like an instant, like it's really short iframe in which as soon as you hit the ground, it's pretty much gone. But now it lasts for the entire duration of the roll, as you can see. And that's really nice for like trying to fish out grabs or just overall staying a little more protected and being able to like chain it into things like breeze, which is really nice. There is a little bit of a gap there. I don't know if it's because my global labs ping or if that's just the way they have it designed, but overall it's a pretty nice change having the longer iframe. And that is pretty much it for the Awakening kit. There were some things like they added 15% back attack damage to the Q buff. But I think that happened 2 weeks ago, back when they gave Archer and Ranger both the ability to do back attacks. So overall, you should be doing so much more damage as compared to live servers. Like Righteous Might getting the extra hits, plus the ability to back attack, and the extra 15% back attack with Q buff. Realistically, it should be hitting twice as hard as it does currently on live, but we'll have to see when it comes. As far as the main hand kit, one of the first things I noticed is they changed the animation for Raga and Spirit. It is now a iframe. As you can see right there, it's a short little iframe. And they changed the animation. And you can't exactly spam it anymore. Like, and I don't know if that's like a bug or if that's intended. But if it isn't a bug, I feel like it's kind of like impact your skating ability if that's like your play style. Maybe it is a bug and that's something that's going to get fixed before it comes to live. But yeah, overall they made it into a short little iframe, which is pretty nice. I mean, it's obviously it's really short and the timings are really small, but nice change overall in terms of more protection. But if it not being spammable like it is on live is a bug, that's going to negatively impact skating ability. So we'll have to see from there. The next biggest thing that they did to the pre-awakened kit is they took the breath system, right? Where in the current system, you have to choose one and you kind of throw them out, you know, with your E, whatever. Well, now they kind of like tied them to certain abilities. So Meteor Dive had the deceleration breath tied into it. So whenever you hit someone with Meteor Dive, they get a 30% slow for 10 seconds. It's really nice. And it just auto triggers on its own. So that's really nice for like 1v1 situations, I would say, depending on how you do it. Obviously, it's still grab bait, but having that extra 30% slow is going to be really huge in terms of being able to kite. As far as the healing one, so they added the healing to Shift Q, which is your Wrath of Nature, and it gives you a 500 HP heal whenever you do your Shift Q. So that's a pretty nice little extra heal, but on top of that, you can still trigger the heal manually with E. So overall, that's like just an extra bit of healing over the top. So as you can see, I can do Shift Q, and it doesn't put the healing on cooldown, and then I can just press E like normal, and then it gets, you know, the healing from that. So now you have 2 heals instead of just having the 1. And then for Arrow Explosion, so they added the stun breath to Arrow Explosion, but they actually got rid of the stun. So it's not actually a stun anymore. They gave it the Lights Mark passive where it reveals a target, shows their name, and they can't go invis after they've been hit by Arrow Explosion. So that one's kind of whatever. One's kind of whatever. I feel like I would probably rather they'd still have the stun, but you know, maybe they have a reason for the way that they did it. Moving down, you have Cover Fire. Cover Fire, they increased the damage by almost 200%, and they increased the radius. So will that make people use it more? Hard to say. Obviously, it's still unprotected, but maybe it's something that you can weave in the end if you need a little bit extra damage to finish somebody off, because the damage modifiers are fairly decent. Past that, you have your Storm of Light. Storm of Light actually got fairly decently increased, I guess. It's not bad. It got an SA on charge up, and you can cancel it at any time, which is really nice. You can dash to cancel it. So maybe you could use that in 1v1s if you just need to like buy yourself a couple extra seconds. I don't know how the damage is going to stack up, because again, it's really hard to test damage on global labs, because a lot of time it doesn't translate well into the actual game. But yeah, that's a cool little change. The next one is Wrath of Nature. So we kind of already went over how they added the heal to Wrath of Nature, but now, so you can cancel it with the dash, and it will still store your charge. So this allows you to reposition and kind of like move and save yourself from maybe a sticky situation. But the way it works currently is if you do it fast and don't let it charge, it does the same damage that it does on live. But if you let it charge all the way, it's gonna do about double the damage that it currently does on live. So this kind of just gives you another option, you know, if you're in a safe situation and you can get that extra little damage out with the crossbow. That's a pretty nice little change, I guess. It's not bad. Not bad. And the nicest thing about it is it does not have any split damage. So if it does end up translating well, you know, obviously, you know, less split damage is good. As far as Earth Shatter, so this is one of the abilities that I've seen a lot of people talk about since the rework. Apparently it does a whole lot of damage now, the Shift E. Again, it's really hard to test the changes on global labs, because in terms of damage, because a lot of things don't translate well to the actual game. So when it comes to damage numbers, I usually like to wait until they hit the actual game to give any judgment. And then past that, you have Arrow Explosion. They actually increased the damage and gave it larger attack radius. So as you can see, the AoE range on Arrow Explosion is pretty massive now. Huge AoE. And they also has the target reveal, as we talked about earlier. So that's pretty cool. And past that, the next thing that's really nice is they gave you a lot more tools in terms of transitioning from pre-awakening to awakening. So, for example, you can now do uproot. So I'm in crossbow. I can actually uproot from pre-awaken directly into awakening, which is pretty dang awesome in terms of like kiting and staying protected, because especially if you use the uproot core. So again, I'm in pre-awaken. And then just the typical SF, bam, uproot, and you're now in awakening. And another thing they did, kind of the same concept, is they made it so that we can use breeze from crossbow. So just your WF, bam, you can transition directly into your pre-awaken, or to your awakening right away. That right there is a nice change for just like overall having more like style, I guess, and just being able to use those protected abilities anytime you need to, because I'm pretty sure most of you have had the situation where you've been CC'd in pre-awaken and you tried to do Spring Breeze upon like standing up, but you were in pre-awaken. So overall, that's a pretty nice change. And that is the majority of the big ones. There's a couple little things, like they sped up Gaping Darkness with the you can flow the kicks by doing you can like flow the kicks by doing like F into SF, but I'm not exactly sure how like viable it is gonna be to use the kicks on live. I guess we'll have to see when it comes. But overall, it's fairly nice. I would like them to give him some accuracy modifiers, because obviously they're still tweaking the 3 reworks that came out, you know, weeks ago. So I imagine they'll do the same for Archer. I would like it for them to give him some kind of accuracy modifiers. and possibly change out the passive here. So because the passive has a lot of extra crit rate, and most of his abilities either have 50% plus crit rate or 30%. Plus you can self buff yourself for another 30%, and then you have your Q buff, right, which makes everything auto crit. So if they could replace this with maybe some accuracy, maybe they can replace it with some kind of crit damage, just something different, because you don't really need the crit rate. That's kind of wasted. But overall, it's much better than I was expecting, to be honest. I didn't really have very high expectations, because Archer seems to be one of those classes that's been pretty forgotten in the past like 2 years of the game. So it's good to see, and hopefully they'll keep doing some tweaks and changing things. But that's it. That was my TLDR, or the biggest things that I saw changes with the kits. And I'll see you next time. Peace.